Okay. Yeah, so let us talk about this quantum mechanics. So in fact, today we'll read a lot. So I have prepared these slides for you, and it involves a lot of reading. Okay. Uh, we have heard about this classical mechanics also and quantum mechanics also. So basically, these classical mechanic and quantum mechanics, so these are basically some principles or some set of rules or laws or theories you may call, so by which you can predict the all events which are happening in nature, right? So for example, if I talk about semiconductor electronics, so we understand everything is at atomic level, right? So we talk about the electrons associated with the electrons, sorry, the atoms, right? So atoms have electrons associated with them, and these electrons move, right? So they have energies also, momentums also. We have talked about conduction band, this covalent band energies, then valence band energies, conduction band energies, right? We also say that they move, electrons move, so they have velocities also, that means, okay, momentum also. So all these things can be predicted by some set of rules or some set of theories or some set of laws, right? So at atomic level, these set of theories or law are called the quantum mechanics or quantum mechanic principles. So let us go point by point. Now, if we talk about the main effort of science, okay, let me change the color over here. Yeah. So the main effort of science is to describe what is happening in nature, right? So whatever is happening in nature, the purpose of science is to describe all those events. So to describe as complete and as concise as possible. That is, one has to uh, think about describing the set of events which are happening in nature completely also and concisely also. Yeah, in short or in very few words or few theory or very small theory or small model, one should capture the entire event which are happening in nature, right? So that is actually the main effort of science. Now physics is also a part of science. Now this physics, in physics, this effort involves observing natural phenomena. So whatever things you observe in nature, so that can be described again. Okay. So those are your observations which you are seeing actually in nature, right? So whatever observations you are noting, okay, so that can be described, okay, by some previously established theory. Okay. So the effort of physics is to observe a natural phenomena and relate these natural phenomena or observations with some previously established theory, and then finally establishing a physical model for the observations. So whatever human beings are observing, human beings can make the model of their observations, okay, to predict the nature of those events. So for example, if you remember, let me take another screen. So for example, let us say we talk about spring. So a spring, and at the end of that spring, there is a weight tied. So some weight is tied at the end of the spring, and then this spring is tied to a wall. Okay. Now there could be oscillation. Yeah? If you try to pull this weight down and then leave it, so this will make regular oscillations or periodic oscillations. It will first of all elongate. When you pull it down, it will elongate. It will become big, little bit in size. Right? It will elongate, and then it will try to compress. Right? It will try to then compress. That's two things: elongation and compression. So both can be observed by human beings. right? So our naked eyes can observe this phenomena, right? That is, to a spring, if I have connected a weight here, okay, and then I pull this weight and then leave it, so this spring will continuously, go up and down. Okay? That is, elongate in this case and contract in this case, right? So this is very well explained already. There is a theory uh, which exists in physics, and that is called simple harmonic motion, right? So periodic motion can be described by the simple harmonic motion theory, right? So that is this natural phenomena which is being observed by human beings. So this can be captured by some mathematical equations or models. Okay, and this is already existing. As I said, this model is already existing, and we understand this is called simple harmonic motion model. Right? Now, similarly, all other events which are happening in nature, so that can be also modeled or described, right? Now, since we saw that spring model, so that we can actually observe, our naked eyes can observe that. So the simple harmonic motion model is based on what we call as classical mechanics or Newtonian physics, right? So classical mechanics can, or Newtonian physics can easily, you know, describe or model all observations which can be seen by naked eyes, right? So whatever we can see, so that can be modeled or described by classical mechanics. Okay. Now, whatever we can't see, for example, in a semiconductor, right? So in semiconductor, obviously silicon semiconductor, if we talk about, we say that silicon semiconductor has a lattice, and that lattice has many silicon atoms, and all those atoms are associated with many electrons. Okay. And those electrons have energies also, and those electrons interact also with each other, and those electrons also move here and there, right? Now, how to capture that model? So I mean, the events which we cannot see, right? So nobody has seen an electron. Nobody has seen in this world an atom, right? So we have, but yes, modeled these electronic events in a semiconductor or any material by saying that, okay, there exists an atom and then there are electrons associated with it. So these are all models, right? So which are predicting a semiconductor or any material behavior. So that can be predicted by a model. Nobody has seen electron, right? Or nobody has seen an atom also, right? So what we haven't seen, I mean, what we cannot observe, so those things can be actually, defined by what we call as quantum mechanic principles, right? So the things or the observations which can be seen by human beings, so those are called, those can be modeled by classical mechanics. But the things at the atomic level, right? All events at the atomic level which cannot be seen by us. So for that we need a separate theory. Classical mechanics will not work. So we need some other theory or some other concepts to describe the behavior of the particle or electron or carrier at the atomic level, and that theory is actually called quantum mechanic theory, right? So this is the difference between the classical mechanics and quantum mechanics. Okay. Now, yeah, so these observations cannot be defined, described, so quantum mechanics came in. And in fact, in 1920, you will find. So in 1920, this quantum mechanical theory or new theory came into existence, which was used to describe the phenomena on the atomic scale, right? Because we cannot see them, these things, so we cannot utilize this classical mechanics or Newtonian physics. So this quantum mechanics can describe the atomic phenomena very well, and it can also predict the way in which electrons behave in solids. Okay? So quantum mechanics can describe this atomic phenomena, and it can predict the way in which electrons behave in solids. Okay? So this is why it is important here. Now, what are the problems with quantum concepts, right? Or quantum physics theory or quantum mechanic theory, right? Mechanical theory. So though it is observed by many people that the quantum mechanic principle are largely mathematical. Okay? So these concepts are largely mathematical in nature, and they do not involve common sense. Right? So common sense, why we say common sense? So common sense quality was actually associated with classical mechanics. So where one can see or observe the events by naked eyes. So, so this actually this classical mechanic principles, so they involve common sense. Common sense, why? Because one can observe individually the phenomena which are happening, right? But quantum concepts, so they involve largely mathematical in nature because they need some models, mathematical models to predict the nature at the quantum level or at the atomic level, because we cannot see what is happening inside a semiconductor, right? So these are largely mathematical, and that is why they are difficult also, right? So quantum mechanics is difficult. The problem is that one cannot observe anything, but one can only predict inside a semiconductor or a material mathematically, right? So that is why it is difficult also. Now, the classical laws of motion. So they are easy to understand because we observe bodies in motion every day. Right? As I said, so whatever you observe, so that can be described by classical mechanics, or classical laws of motion can, for example, describe a body which is moving. Okay, because a moving body can be observed, or a motion can be observed, okay? But an electron motion cannot be observed. Right? So for electron motion, one has to utilize this classical mechanics. Yeah. So the atoms and electrons, okay, and their effects cannot be observed naturally, and we human beings have a very little feeling of what is happening on the atomic scale. So that is why it is necessary to develop a new theory, okay, a new theory which can describe the phenomena of atoms and electrons. Okay. Now, if we talk about light, right? So in early days, some of the experiments, they emphasized or they proved the wave nature of the light, right? So the light has wave nature, which was predicted by some experiments. Okay. Now some other experiments, they have revealed the nature of photons. Right? I mean, light has wave nature, and light also consists of photons. Okay, and photons are basically particles. Okay. Similarly, electrons. So all these are particles. Electron, photons. So these are particles. So light has both wave nature. It has wave nature also, and particle nature also. Right. So particle in terms of photon. Okay. And this is called wave particle duality. Right. That is, light has wave nature also. Okay. So wave nature, that is, when I talk about a wave, so wave obviously has two parameters. One is lambda, that is wavelength, and the other one is frequency. Okay. So this light's wave nature can be defined by two parameters, that is wavelength and frequency. Okay. And similarly, the light also has particle nature. Okay. So particle nature can be defined by energy and momentum, that is particle energy and momentum, or electron energy and momentum of electron, right? E and P. So this was actually proved by some experiment, for example in photoelectric effect, and also in Planck's hypothesis. It was seen that light has both wave nature and also a particle nature, or wave particle duality, right? Then Planck came up with this relation, which tells us, which is actually a relation between energy of the light, E, and its frequency. So it says that Planck's hypothesis says that energy of the light is proportional to its frequency. Okay. And this is related by this Planck's constant h. Okay. So this relation was given by Planck, which says that energy of the light is proportional to its frequency. So energy here is now again a particle nature and frequency is the wave nature. Now based on this wave particle duality principle of light, another scientist, Louis de Broglie, so he proposed that particles of matter such as electrons similarly could have a wave character in certain experiments, right? So after this thing was proved, that is light has wave particle duality via Planck hypothesis and photoelectric effect, this Louis de Broglie, he came up. I think my voice is audible to you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Maybe I'll shut the video to save some bandwidth so that my voice is more clear. Just a second. Okay. Okay. So this Louis de Broglie, he came up with again a theory that similar to light is having a wave particle duality, the particles of matter, that is particles of matter are electrons. Right? Electron is a particle which is existing in a matter. So this can also have same character, that is a character of a wave also and particle also. So wave particle principle can also be applied to electrons, so which was again being proposed by this Louis de Broglie. Okay. So de Broglie, he proposed, I'll select a pointer over here. Okay. Yeah. So de Broglie, he proposed that particle of momentum p, right? Particle of momentum p has a wavelength given by, or the wavelength of a particle is inversely proportional to the momentum, right? So wavelength of a particle is inversely proportional to its momentum p, and then p is given by mv, that is mass into velocity, electron mass and electron velocity. Okay? So this was proposed by de Broglie. Okay? Now Planck's and de Broglie's relationships, so they are fundamental in quantum physics, okay, and are valid for all situations and objects, not just for electrons and photons, but these Planck's and de Broglie's relationships, they are valid for all situations and objects, including photons and electrons, not only limited to photons and electrons, but to all situations and objects. These two principles are valid. As they connect, that is these two relationships, they connect the wave description of a phenomena. When I say wave description, so I say wave is associated with two properties, frequency and wavelength, to a particle description. Okay, so wave description and particle description are connected. Okay, so here also you can see I have a relationship between wave and particle. Right, so wave is here wavelength lambda and velocity, or maybe p, momentum. So this is particle nature. That is wave nature and particle nature both are connected via these two relationships. Okay. So particle nature, this is energy and momentum are the two parameters. Okay. Now another important thing you will notice here is that the problem of describing the behavior of a particle at atomic levels, right? So the problem of describing the behavior of a particle or the behavior of electron at atomic level is limited to finding out first of all the position of the particle, right? So what is the position of the particle? So I'll write here. So the position of the particle, or maybe the position of the electron. Okay. So electron position, then number of electrons or the number of particles, okay. Then the energy of the particle, okay, and the momentum of the particle, that is P is equal to mv, right? So these things are important, okay, and via classical mechanic principles or classical mechanic theory, we always try to find out these four things. That is position of the electron, number of electron, total number of electrons in the system, total energy of the electrons, and the momentum of the electron, right? So this entire classical mechanics, or not classical mechanics, because classical mechanics cannot define the electronic behavior, but yes, quantum mechanics can. So the entire quantum mechanics is used to find out these four things. Okay? So the main motto of this quantum mechanic is to find out just these four things. That is, one is electron's position, the other is number of electrons in the system, then electron energy, and also the momentum of the electron. So this is my main objective of this theory, that is quantum mechanics theory. Okay. Now let us talk about this Schrodinger's wave equation approach. Okay. So again, this Schrodinger wave equation approach is a part of quantum mechanics theory. Now this Schrodinger wave equation approach is also used to find again these four parameters. Okay. So the use of the Schrodinger wave equation approach, which is actually a quantum mechanical approach of finding again what things? These things. Okay. That is electron position, number of electrons, energy of electrons, and the momentum of the electron. Okay. Okay. So for photons, we saw that wavelength was related to frequency by this relation. That is, lambda is c by v, where c is the speed of light and v is the velocity of photon, or speed of photon, right? So we saw that photons wavelength is related to frequency by this relation. For electrons, so it is a different relationship, which is known as band structure. So when we talk about band structure in detail, we will see how lambda and or wavelength and frequency are related via the band structure for electrons, right? But yes, for photons, I have this relation valid, but for electrons, it is a different relation, which is actually given by the band structure. So we'll talk about band structure. When we'll talk about band structure, we'll talk about this relationship. Okay. Now, the principles of quantum mechanics, they were developed from two different points of view at about the same time in 1920. So in 1920, people found that classical mechanics is not sufficient to describe the electronic behavior. They came up with this quantum mechanic principle. Now this quantum mechanic principle has two approaches. Okay? So there are two approaches to this quantum mechanic principle, right, or quantum mechanic theory. So number one approach is developed by Heisenberg, which utilizes the mathematics of matrices, and therefore it is called matrix mechanics. Okay? So quantum mechanics have two approaches. It has two approaches. One is based on Heisenberg principle or Heisenberg theory, which involves mathematics of matrices and is also called matrix mechanics. Okay? So matrix mechanics, obviously, it means it involves a lot of calculations. Yeah? The drawback is that calculations are many. Now, the second approach in the quantum mechanics theory is, Schrodinger wave equation approach, right? So where Schrodinger developed an approach utilizing a wave equation, which is also now called wave mechanics. So Schrodinger, he proposed the wave equation, that is wave equation of an electron. Okay? And then from that wave equation, the solution of that Schrodinger equation will give you what? It will give you again these quantities, which I have already told you, right? So this is the main motto of using quantum mechanics to find out these four things. And quantum mechanics has two approaches, again, 1 and 2. One is via Heisenberg theory, which involves mathematics of matrices and is also called matrix mechanics. And then the other approach is developed by Schrodinger, which utilizes a wave equation for an electron, equation of electron, a wave equation for electron, because electron has both wave nature and particle nature. So this is called wave mechanics. Now, the advantage of Schrodinger theory is that in the wave mechanics or Schrodinger equation approach, the solutions to a few simple problems can be obtained by less mathematical discussion. Right? So mathematics involved is less when we talk about the Schrodinger wave equation based approach. But yes, matrix based approach which was developed by Heisenberg, so it utilizes or it has a lot of mathematics involved. So one can say that Schrodinger's approach can be a little bit simpler, okay, to find out these parameters. Okay. Now, whenever we say that we want to find out these parameters, so one has to always remember that the exact accurate value for these parameters for individual electrons cannot be found. In fact, you cannot distinguish two electrons. So individual values for, these values for individual electrons cannot be found, right? Or it is impossible to describe with absolute precision involving individual properties. Precision is also not possible. That is, you cannot say that this value is 100% accurate, right? So you can only find out a probabilistic value, right? Accurate value calculation is impossible, and that too for individual particle or individual electron, because electrons are indistinguishable. So you cannot say that this is for an individual electron, okay, at the atomic scale. Instead, what it calculates is it calculates the average values. Okay? You have millions of electrons, so it will find out the average value of these values, that is average energy of electron, or maybe average momentum of electron, okay, or the average number of electrons. So these values can be found. Exact values with exact precision cannot be found for individual particle, but yes, average values can be found. Average values of what? Position, average values of momentum, average values of energy of particle like electron. Okay, so this is very important to note down, that accurate values and accurate values for individual particles cannot be found. Okay, in fact, it is impossible. Now, another important thing to note here is that one cannot find the exact position of an electron also, right? So somebody says that somebody wants to find out the position of the electron. So one cannot find out the exact position of an electron also, okay? But yes, one can find out the probability of finding an electron at certain position. So one can find out only the probability of finding an electron at a certain position. Okay, one cannot say that certainly that at this point the electron is present, right? So it is, nothing is certain here. Second thing to remember is that nothing is certain in these calculations. You cannot say that the electron will be found certainly 100% it will be found at this position. No, it cannot be. So only you can predict what is the probability of the electron to be present at a particular location or position, right? And that also relates to this Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So since nothing is certain here, okay, and everything is in terms of probability, so this is one of the important result of this quantum mechanics, that probability density function of each quantity can be obtained, okay, for a particle in a certain environment, right? So only probability density functions, so this can be calculated. Okay? So for example, if I say probability density function of the position, so that means I can only predict, or I can only comment on the probability of finding out an electron in a particular region, which is given by probability density function of, let us say it is a function of position x. Okay, so probability density function, let us say for a position, a probability density function is a function of x, let's say, and x is position. So that means one can only find out the probability of finding an electron at position x. Or if it is x to dx, x to x plus dx, right? Let's say this is x and this point is x plus dx, right? So what is the probability of finding an electron in this region, that is x to x plus dx, right? So that can be given. Okay. So that means only expectation values can be provided. Probability in terms of, I mean, it is 20% possible that electron is present there in x plus dx region, or maybe 30%, maybe 40%, or maybe even more, right? So only probabilities are calculated. Nothing is certain over here in this theory. Now, the next important point, if probability density function is given, let us say probability density function Px is given for a one-dimensional problem, right? So since electrons may be present in all three directions, x, y, z, okay, so similar analysis can be extended to find out the position in other two directions also. But yes, let us talk only about just one dimension, that is, let us say x only, right? So if probability density function for a one dimension is given by Px, if it is given by Px, then probability of finding the particle in a range x to x plus dx, right? So probability of finding an electron at x is Px. Okay, probability of finding an electron at point x is Px. Okay. So the probability of finding a particle in this range, that is x to x plus dx. Okay. So this can be given by simply multiplying the probability Px by dx, okay, and then integrating this to the range of values of x, right? So let us say in a material, I have this material, okay, I don't know what is its dimension over here, okay, let us say it is minus infinity to infinity, okay. So if I have to find out in this semiconductor the probability of finding an electron, what is the probability of finding an electron? So I'll simply multiply or simply integrate the probability of finding an electron at position x, right, which is Px, okay, and the limits of my integral will be minus infinity to infinity. Okay. So probability of finding an electron in a semiconductor material would be given by, maybe this infinity could be maybe something, let's say x to dx, x to x plus dx it could be, okay, or maybe minus infinity to infinity. Okay. Now in a semiconductor material, it is very definite that electron will be somewhere, right? So that means probability of finding an electron in this region, that is minus infinity to infinity, will be 100%, right? That is 1, because electron will be somewhere. Obviously, it will be certainly be somewhere. Maybe it is here, or maybe it is here, or maybe it is here, or maybe it is here, right? So probability of finding an electron in this semiconductor, okay, considering x is minus infinity to infinity, is always 1. Okay? Because electron will be obviously somewhere in the semiconductor. Okay? So we say that this integral minus infinity to infinity Px dx is equal to 1. Okay? Or we say that this probability density function Px is normalized. So when we say it is normalized, so that means this integral, the outcome of this integral is equal to unity. Right? Or we say that probability density function is multiplied by this dx, and x integration is taken over all x's. Let us say it is minus infinity to infinity. So the particle will be obviously present somewhere. So that means you will 100% definitely find particle somewhere. So the outcome of this integral could be taken as 1, or probability of finding electron would be 100% in this region. Okay? Or we say that this integral is normalized because the integral equals unity. Okay. Now, if one has to find out, as I said that maybe here we saw that exact values cannot be found, but average values can always be found. Right? So exact values cannot be found. Okay. So how the average value is found? Average value of a function of x. So average value of function of x can be found by multiplying the value of that function in each increment dx. Okay. So average value of a function of x, let us say this is my function of x, fx. So average value of function of x, fx is found by multiplying the value of that function in each increment dx by the probability of finding the particle in that dx, which is px dx, and then summing over all x, and let us say x is minus infinity to infinity, minus infinity to plus infinity. So this gives me this relation, that is average value. This represents average value. The average value can be found by this integral, that is minus infinity to infinity fx px dx. And this is only true when probability density function is normalized, that is integral px dx is 1. So when integral px dx is not 1, that is probability density function is not normalized. So in that case, you have to divide this by this relation, right? When it is not normalized. When it is normalized, then obviously it is 1 over here, so we don't need to divide it again by this integral px dx. So this is how average value of a function can be found. Now, having known all these things, let us talk about the Schrodinger wave equation in a little bit more detail. Now, Schrodinger wave equation is based on few basic postulates, right? So there are 4 or 5 postulates. So let us read those postulates. So postulate number 1 says that each particle in a physical system, okay, each particle in a physical system is described by a wave function psi x y z t, right? So each particle is described by its wave function. Yeah, we saw that since particle or electron has both wave function and electron has wave particle duality. So the wave function of that electron can be defined by this relation, that is psi x y z t, right? Now this wave function and its space derivative, right? So the space derivative and this wave function, that is del psi by del x plus del psi by del y plus del psi by del z, all are continuous, finite and single value, right? So this is first postulate, right? That is the particle's wave function is psi x y z t. This is very important to remember. Now second postulate says that before second postulate, let us talk about some of the classical variables. Okay? So classical variables, when I try to apply classical mechanics to find out the nature of whatever we are observing, right? So when we are using classical mechanics, we have classical variables, for example, position x, function of position x, then momentum at a particular position px, then energy. Okay. So let us say these are all classical variables utilized when utilizing classical mechanics principle to describe an observation. Now when we are using quantum mechanical theory, okay, so when we are using quantum mechanical theory to describe any observation, then we need to replace these variables by the quantum mechanical variables. Okay, so that is the quantum mechanical variable for the classical variable x is now x only, but yes, this is Simpson operator, so this operates on the wave function psi, this psi. So that means wherever you will see x, so you will simply multiply x by the wave function, because x is the operator which operates on always the wave function psi x y z, or maybe it is psi x only to psi x. Okay. Similarly, if I see when I am applying quantum mechanics principle, okay, to find out something, and if I see this function fx, okay, so fx is now a quantum operator which operates again on what? the wave function psi x. So I'll not just write fx, but I'll write fx psi x always in my equations. Similarly, if I see this momentum, right? So this px is a classical variable for momentum. Now the operator for this px is h cross by j del by del x. It is not h cross by j del by del x only. You'll have to, this operator will operate on what? The wave function. So I'll again write a wave function over here. Similarly for energy, this is my operator and this operates on this wave function psi x. So wherever in my equations I see x, I'll replace it by x psi x. fx will be replaced by fx psi x. Similarly, for momentum, this is an operator which is replaced by this operator multiplied by this, or maybe this operator operates on this. Similarly, this operator on this wave function. Okay. So this is only for x direction. So if I have y z directions also, so similarly one can extend the same analysis to y z directions also. That is other two directions also. So that was second postulate. Now third postulate. So third postulate says that probability of finding a particle with a wave function psi in the volume dx dy dz. Okay. This is my volume dx dy dz. Okay. And I want to find out the probability of finding a particle. Okay. Some particle, that is electron, is obviously in this material. Okay. XYZ dimension. Okay. So XYZ is the dimension of this material which has electrons, and the wave function of those electrons is psi. Okay. So probability of finding a particle within this box, that is the box which has XYZ volume or XYZ dimension, or maybe dx dyz is the dz is the volume. So probability of finding an electron is psi star psi dx dy dz. Okay. So probability of finding this electron in this cube, okay, is psi star psi dx dy dz, where psi is the wave function of this electron. Okay. Now again the product psi star psi here is normalized according to the previous equation, that is this equation. Here this one. So it is normalized again, okay, so that psi star psi dx dy dz is equal to 1, right? So this psi star psi is what? It is probability density function, that is probability of finding an electron, psi star psi dx dy dz. Okay. So if it is x y z is minus infinity to infinity, so if you extend this, integrate it to minus infinity to infinity, so obviously you will find the electron somewhere. So that means probability of finding electron is obviously 100% or 1, or we say that this is normalized. Similarly, we had seen average value calculations over here, this one. So here we calculated the average value, okay, of a function fx. So similarly, average value of any variable q, so this can be calculated from its wave function by if I say q is a variable, and I want to find out average value which is given by this q, right? So I'll simply use q operator now, right? So because we have already said in postulate number 2 that if classical variable is something, maybe q or x, so you will simply use the quantum operator, that is quantum operator q will operate now on the wave function. So similarly, I will find out the average value by operating the operator QOP on the wave function. Now, once you find the wave function of a particle, right? So the problem is now to find out the wave function of the particle. So once you are able to find the wave function of the particle, you can find its average position, energy, and momentum, right? So once you find out this psi, you can find out the average values of position, energy, and momentum. Okay. So average value, always I say average value, they are not certain values, that is not exact values, only probabilities and only average values. Okay. Now let us try to develop the Schrodinger's equation. So if I try to write total energy, in classical mechanics. So classical equation of total energy of a particle can be given by total energy is kinetic energy plus potential energy of the particle, right? So in classical mechanics or classical equation for the energy of a particle, that is total energy of a particle, can be given by this relation, that is total energy is equal to potential energy plus kinetic energy. Okay, kinetic energy is given by mv square by 2, very popular formula you might have read in physics also, that kinetic energy is mv square by 2. Okay, or you can convert this to p square by 2m, right? Simply multiply and divide by m. Okay, so this relates to now m square v square by 2m. So m square v square becomes p, so p square by 2m plus potential energy, we say potential energy is given by v and total energy is given by E, right? So this is how we represent total energy in classical mechanics. Now let us try to represent the same in quantum mechanics. Okay, so in quantum mechanics, obviously we said that we will use the operator for all these variables. Which variables? P. So for P, I'll use what? This. Okay, so let us see where we have P. So P is here. Okay, so this will be replaced, P square, that is P square will be replaced by this, that is h by j del by del x of psi x. H by j del by del x of psi x, right? So h by j, I write h by j del by del x of psi x. So P will be
Sir, what
replaced
is
by,
J?
yeah, any queries?
Sir, what is J?
Yeah, j is an imaginary number, complex conjugate, complex imaginary. J square is -1, right? Imaginary. J square is, that is j multiplied by j is -1. Okay. So you know complex number can be represented by real part a plus jb and the imaginary part. Okay. So this is real part. Any number can be represented by a real part and its complex part. Okay. Real and imaginary, sorry. Okay. So j represents imaginary component and j square is -1. Okay. So P is h by j del by del x of psi x. So simply, since this is P square, so everything becomes a square over here, all things. So this becomes h square, okay, del square by del x2 psi xt, okay, and 2m is already present over here. So we have 2m over here, right? Now this
So
potential
it's
energy V. Yeah, please.
so it's 4:30.
It's time.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It's 4:30.
You have a class after this.
No, sir.
If you don't have a class,
Yes, sir.
then maybe you have a class.
No,
Yeah,
sir, we
if you
don't
don't
have
have a
class
class, then
after
I'll
this, sir.
just take 5 minutes to wind up things.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, I was asking, sir, मुझे link नहीं आ रहा सर इसके class के calendar पर.
Okay. So I'll add your email ID. Just let me finish the class and then remind me. I'll add your name. So then all the links and everything, all information you will get. Okay. Okay, maybe let me quickly wind these things in just 5 minutes. Okay. So now we replace this V by again by its quantum operator part, that is V can be replaced. So V is, let us say, Vx or x. So this is replaced by this. So we replace, or maybe we say that we are utilizing V as it is, and now V is the operator, and it operates on again the wave function, right? And then E, right? So E has to be replaced. So what is E here? Let us go back. So E for quantum operator, it is minus h by j del by del t of psi x, right? Minus h by j del by del t of psi x. So minus h by j, is it so? Yeah, where is it? Oh, here. Minus h by j del psi by del t. Okay. So this equation actually is called Schrodinger's wave equation. Okay, and this is only in one direction, that is x. We have considered only one direction, so this is called Schrodinger's wave equation in one direction. Okay, so now this involves two things, yeah, both position and time. You can see x, which represents position, and t represents time over here, right? So this is Schrodinger's wave equation. I mean, time dependent. It's not time independent. It is called time dependent because t is also appearing over here, right? So this is in one dimension. Now in three dimensions, the same equation can be written by including this term, that is del square. Okay, and del square psi now is given by this, that is d2 psi by dx2 plus d2 psi by dy2 plus d2 psi by dz2. Rest of the things remains almost same. Okay, so this is the Schrodinger's equation in three dimensions. Okay, now the wave equation, we had seen that the wave equation, so that involves both position and time. Position is also present, and this time is also present. Okay, now in many cases you will find that those cases are time independent. Okay? So in many cases you will find time has no meaning, so only position is important. So it is important here to split this equation into two separate quantities, that is, one would be only time dependent and one would be only position dependent. And then maybe if we require both, we can add both the things together, right? So these variables can be separated to obtain time dependent equation in one dimension. Okay? So these can be separated, and this is time dependent part, that is d phi t by dt j e by h phi t is 0. So this is the time dependent part, and this is time independent part. Okay, that is which involves only position. Right? So this is time independent, which involves only position, and this is time dependent part. Right? So all these quantities which are appearing here, the things which are appearing in time, we separate them out and write it here as equation 2.26. Similarly, the things which are appearing here in x, that is position, we separate them out and we write them as equation number 2.27. Yeah. Now the solution of this Schrodinger equation, so that will give you what? Okay. So the solution of this Schrodinger equation will give you what? It will give you the four parameters which I had told you. That is, it will give you the position of the electron, the average position, not accurately. It will give you number of electrons, again average number of electrons, or maybe in terms of probability density function, then average energy of the electron and the average momentum of the electron, provided the wave function is known. Okay, so solution of the Schrodinger equation will give you all these four quantities. Maybe I'll end up the lecture now here itself, and if you have any queries, then maybe I can take up them. Please, if you have any queries, then please ask. So if you have any queries, then please ask. And yet somebody was asking to add email ID. So maybe you can write your email ID in the text box. So I'll add your email ID so that you start receiving all the links and all the information about this course. Please type your email ID in the chat box. Yeah, if you have any query, then please ask. Okay, so I hope you don't have any questions. So maybe we'll end up the class here itself. And tomorrow we'll meet in the morning. I think 9:30 we have class. Okay.